9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to Freedom Talk Radio with your host Andy Peacher, live from the UK. Email us freedomtalkradio2013@gmail.com or visit us at freedomtalkradioonline.com.
Yeah, very warm welcome, Tim. And everyone who's listening. It's August 2nd, Sunday, and we've got Tim here, author Timothy Spearman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the two Ps.
Yeah, hi, Andy. Yeah, only two Ps today, folks. Our professor friend Nick, he is under the weather, unfortunately, but we'll see him again another day.
Most people are under the weather, otherwise you'd be in space. You get it?
Yeah, well, we're in under the inclement weather in both your neck of the woods and mine. Yeah, Ottawa has been cloudy for the last few days and a little rainy. And up there in the Orkney Islands, you've been having foul weather recently, yeah?
Yeah, we tend to get it off and on in the summer, but always in the winter.
Okay, so the Team Antichrist has been a common theme because all these, disruptive world events are really something that's traceable right to their front doorstep. And so a profound influence in Team Antichrist is the Shabbat. The Shabbat influence over the world's leading puppeticians, we don't call them politicians, we call them puppeticians, is visible and in plain sight and has been for, half a century at least. You can verify that by going to Google Images and then viewing the pictures displayed for the following Shabbat Putin. I'm not even sure that this particular Vladimir Putin is the original. I think he's been replaced by a doppelganger, by a lookalike double. And this one is more of a Shabbati, let's put it that way. And Trump is a major Shabbati. Macron is a major Shabbati. And Boris Johnson was a major Shabbati. And Starmer, quite obviously, is a genocidal, let's kill all the whites, Shabbati. He's trying to purge his own country of his own kind. It's clear. He's having all the virgin girls, the British girls, raped on an industrial scale. And he's okay with that. Crazy, but that's true. Shabbati, Margaret Thatcher was a Shabbati. I was a bit surprised to see that. And Tony Blair was, he'd have to have been, he's one of the most evil people Britain ever produced, Shabbati. He was, from what I can gather, connected to MI6. And I believe he had something to do with the 777 bombing. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, the London bombing, yeah.
Yeah.
And Lee Rigby.
Another Shabbati is Friedrich Merz. You heard of that dude?
Heard of him, but I can't remember.
Another Chabadi is our Prime Minister, Mark Carney. No surprise there. Another Chabadi, Millet. And no surprise to learn that Bill Clinton was a Chabad puppetician. And Bush Jr. and Sr. would have been Chabad puppeticians. Nasty people, eh?
Yeah, very. I was going to talk about one, but you're obviously on a rollover.
No, tell me, what were you going to tell me?
He's a Shabadi or not, but he's certainly not a Shagudi. He's probably more of a Shabadi. But it's nice this is nice to know. And a lot of the mainstream press are reporting this, and this is just breaking news, but you've probably heard it yesterday over there, but over here it's today. And it says the intense pressure facing Fauci as GOP lawmakers push for his jailing over the pandemic. The 85-year-old doctor, once ahead of government's COVID response, has now faced mounting congressional threats and legal threats. It's because basically Rand Paul, he published Fauci's private diaries, and it mentioned about how the germs started and so on. And yeah, I don't need to read it all, you know the rest. But yeah, it's good that some of the Shabadis are getting their
comeuppance.
That's the word, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, in the diary, Fauci admitted that it wasn't a case of an animal at the wet market having a virus jumping the species barrier from this animal species to humans. He unequivocally confessed in his own diary to the fact that it was from the gain of function know-how that had been transferred over to the Wuhan lab in China, and with funding from the NIH, NIAID, and he was responsible as the head of both organizations, and the funding was disguised and hidden by a grant agency that made the payment on behalf of NIH and NIAID, and that was obviously to hide the true source of the funding. I believe it's Peter Denzek that was responsible for that grant, that subcontracting grant agency.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Another one on that, just quickly to finish.
Sure.
I had watched a film it must have been 2 weeks ago now. It wasn't 2020 or 2021, but it was before that. And it was almost the same story. It was a COVID panic about an animal in China that made people ill. And it was actually based in Toronto. So it's like COVID-19, well before COVID-19, but based in Toronto. It's an amazing film.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't know how the hell where I found it from, and been trying to find the title to send you a link, and I can't find it. Now, I said to Joanne, I said, did I dream what I just watched? She said, no, because you said that's where Tim lived. So I couldn't have dreamed it.
Okay, well, the other list of those who are members of Team Antichrist would be Zion-Nazi Scott Bessant, who is the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Zion-Nazi Ted Cruz, who's been in a lot of the Senate hearings that we've been watching on YouTube. He's a Texas senator. I was a bit surprised by his profile, being a Zio-Nazi. And another Zio-Nazi, Peter Thiel, co-founder of Palantir and PayPal. And Elon Musk is a Zio-Nazi, and we know him as the billionaire in charge of Tesla and SpaceX, and having taken over Twitter as X. And son-in-law of Zio-Nazi Donald Trump is Zio-Nazi Jared Kushner. I pronounce it Yared because that's the original Hebrew pronunciation of the silent J that becomes like a Y, Yared. Okay, and by the way, it's from that name, Yared, that we get the English word yard. And Yared's father was Enoch, from whom we get the word inch. And these patriarchs in the ancient they're mentioned in the book of Enoch, and they're also mentioned in the book of Genesis from the Torah. They're the founders of land and time measures, Enoch and Yared. Hence, the son Yared being the founder of land measures, which have a correlation to time measures, as it turns out. But anyway, he was the son of Enoch. Okay. Another Zion-Nazi, Kaja Kayas, Vice President of the European Commission, which is the Politburo of Soviet Europe. So it's unfortunately a communist bloc. And Zion-Nazi Dan Driscoll, the U.S. Army Secretary. And another Zion-Nazi, Joe Lonsdale, co-founder of Palantir. And Zion-Nazi Strauss Zelnick, CEO of Take-Two Interactive, the video game company behind GTA 6. And there are said to be 200 other prominent Zion-Nazis, which we haven't named, and maybe they'll come up in a future podcast, okay? All right, Andy.
Yeah, I was just Googling that again, and I can't pronounce it now. It was a 2011 film called Contagion or something like that.
You're talking about this email you just sent me, COVID film?
Yeah, that's it. When you press that link, it tells you all about the film.
Okay.
I mean, I can probably just mention it. Contagion, but I think I watched a film that was the same storyline to this, but they'd changed the title because it had COVID in the title. But anyway, this film is exactly the storyline, and it's about a lady returning from a business trip in Hong Kong. She dies from what seems to be flu or some other type of infection. Then her young son dies later, and her husband, Mitch, seems to be immune from it. And it basically starts spreading within Canada. Then the people on the flight get it, and that then travels through the rest of the world. And it's basically, because it says, as contagion spreads to millions of people worldwide, society order begins to break down as people panic. Basically, if that was 2011 film and we didn't get it until 2020, 2021, it was obviously a plandemic rather than a pandemic. They made
Yeah,
films about it.
yeah, right. Predictive programming, as we've seen with so many of these world events, they have a book or a film that comes out beforehand, which in the conspiracy milieu has been called predictive programming. Another example, going back in time, is a Jesuit priest actually wrote a book called The Titan before the 1912 Titanic disaster. And the ship had so many similarities to the actual ship RMS Titanic. It had the same weight and tonnage, approximately the same length and dimensions, and it had the same number of casualties approximately as with the real Titanic. And the name is only slightly different, Titan rather than Titanic. Now, apparently, the names of the two twin ships, RMS Titanic and RMS Olympic, referred to the ancient Greek gods, the Olympians and the Titans, largely because there were two rival factions vying for world government authority and power, and they each had their dream or their plan for what world government would consist of, what aim or agenda it would pursue. And these two rival factions were like the gods in the Greek ancient Greek myth. They were at war with each other. And one of those factions were the sons of Belial. And that, the demon god Belial. So that would have been the faction that actually triumphed in the end. And so the ships were swapped, the two sister ships were swapped, and apparently the exchange took place on April 1st. And we know that that's the date chosen for April Fool's Day, right? So that's when the two ships were swapped. So the RMS Olympic masqueraded as the RMS Titanic, and that's the one that set sail from Southampton on its fatal transatlantic voyage. There was an explosion below the waterline near the bow before the ship set sail, and it was already taking on water before it set sail. The fire was not extinguished before the ship left port in Southampton. The captain, the famous Captain Smith, was intent on getting underway, trying to break a crossing record because this White Star shipping line was competing with the Cunard line, and if they could show that the larger and more muscle-bound White Star ships were actually more agile than people had thought by making us sea crossing in record time, it would stand the White Star shipping line in good stead in terms of competing with the rival line, the Cunard line. Anyway, the fire that broke out in a coal bunker after an explosion, it was extinguished when the ship was already underway. But, the ship was taking on water as a result of the hole that was blowing in the hull. I think there was also reports of the ship manifesting a decided lean to one side, I think the port side, as it was crossing the Atlantic Ocean. And then a Italian passenger, he actually made an affidavit to the effect that he saw the ship being rammed by another ship in the middle of the night, presumably after midnight, not too long before the actual sinking took place. So the story of the iceberg as the cause of the disaster seems to be a cover story for two acts of sabotage which were responsible for strikening the ship, which was actually the RMS Olympic, and causing it to founder and sink. Anyway, so Morgan Robertson was the Jesuit priest that wrote this book 14 years before the Titanic disaster, and so that's a classic example of predictive programming. And by the way, the White Star shipping line was owned by the Jesuit Order of the Catholic Church. So keep that in mind. And there were so many accidents at sea with the White Star shipping line that I believe they were dispensing of unwanted cargo at sea. And you know what I mean by that. I'm implying that to get rid of enemies of the Jesuits at sea was a convenient place to commit murder most foul and to get rid of the bodies just by dumping them overboard. Anyway, Andy, you got any thoughts?
No, I was just thinking, I can't remember any events leading up to 911.
Oh, you mean like predictive programming?
Yeah, because that's kind of interesting how you put it.
Well, I think there were some albums, record albums, largely in the rap genre, that were being published prior to 9/11 that seemed to be alluding to and I have pictures of that, of the various albums, as an example of predictive programming, and it's in my book, Shakespeare's Codex, All the World's Staged and We Are Merely Played, which I do hope to publish, and once it's out, people can see these examples for themselves. I'm also suspicious, even though I love the band Supertramp and believe that it may have been one of the greatest rock bands of all time. I love their music. They were very, very popular in the 1970s. Unfortunately, Roger Hodgson and Rick Davey, the founding members of the band, had some infighting over royalties, and I think there was a lawsuit, and it led to the breakup of maybe the greatest creative force in music in the rock pop world of all time. I mean, they were enormously talented, especially Roger Hodgson. He just made, he was prolific, and he just made one lovely, tuneful, melodic hit song after another. And the albums that were released were just replete with lovely, beautiful hit songs composed by him. And he's still active, and I've seen some of his later work on YouTube. But anyway, they had an album called Breakfast in America, and apparently it features the Statue of Liberty prominently on the album cover. But I recall mention of some element of predictive programming in the album cover related to 9/11, which did in fact happen at breakfast time in America, right when the North and the South Tower were targeted consecutively. I don't believe the story that the passenger airliners crashed into the towers and the burning jet fuel melted the structures and caused them to collapse. I don't believe that story one iota. I believe that the buildings were brought down by controlled demolition, and the whole thing was pre-planned, pre-coordinated. And by the way, the Twin Towers were not the only towers that collapsed. Building 7, World Trade Center 7, also collapsed. It was also known as the Solomon Brothers Building. And we have Larry Silverstein's confession of guilt on radio, where he basically said, well, there'd been such a terrible loss of life, we decided to pull it. Pull it is in the jargon of the building trade, we decided to bring it down, pull it meaning bring it down by controlled demolition. Well, you have to pre-plant the explosives and inspect the building over the course of many days in advance of pulling a building. So that shows premeditation and pre-planning. And I have no doubt that that rat is as guilty as sin. I have no doubt whatsoever. I mean, he insured the buildings before the event for terrorism, and it's the whole thing smacks of graft and corruption, the whole thing.
Yeah, apparently, in Tom Clancy's A Debt of Honor, a 1994 novel, it ended with a pilot essentially crashing a Boeing into a US Capitol building. And then in 1997, The Simpsons had an episode which featured a brochure with a $9 price tag next to the Twin Towers, which looked like the numbers 911. And then it says The Lone Gunman, a March 2001 TV pilot showed a hijacked commercial liner being remotely controlled to crash into New York. So, yeah. But they put them down as conspiracy theories rather than predictable programming.
Oh, is that so? All right. Well, anyway, that band Supertramp that I was mentioning, they also had an album called Crime of the Century with a hit song, which was the title track, Crime of the Century. Could that song have alluded to some future event that would be considered the crime of the century, and in fact the crime that would launch the project for a new American century, which was a document authored by the neocon Paul Wolfowitz? Anyway, not to impute blame on the wonderful rock band Supertramp, I just find that the music industry is controlled by these wealthy people that own these record companies, and they may have nefarious connections to some of the Shabbatis. And so, even though the band is innocent of any wrongdoing, they're just making music. Their albums and maybe even their songs are corrupted by these record labels, which happen to exploit the popularity of the band to telegraph some kind of message to the public, which seems to have been the case with the Beatles, with the Tavistock Institute crafting many of the lyrics of the Beatles, and doing so for nefarious political reasons. Do you believe that Tavistock Beatles story?
Yeah, it's possible, isn't it? But the Beatles really did some great true life songs as well. Like Supertramp did.
Well,
If I was listening to one
yeah.
song on the TV, used to play it with somebody I used to know, Kevin Bull, quite a lot. Something Inside So Strong, yeah. That came on just as I was dialing you in.
Oh, is that
Something
right?
Inside So Strong, by Labrie Sifri. That's a good song. For patriotism. And Pink Floyd done
Yeah.
some good songs as well that meant things.
Oh yeah, I mean, the some of the Pink Floyd material is highly politicized, highly political. The Wall being probably the most obvious example.
Yeah, they mentioned Maggie in one of the songs, and my hometown Peterborough. They mentioned that in one of their songs. So yeah,
Really?
yeah. Um,
Which album and which song is this?
I might have to Google that one 'cause I can't remember. It's been so long ago. I think most of the songs I used to listen to came from the Wall anyway. Um, but I'll Google it.
Interesting.
But they mentioned Maggie Thatcher. They did.
Oh yeah.
I think it's the same song. I'm just going to Google it. Um, oh, okay. Google says that's not the case.
Oh,
Oh well. I'm
well,
sure them, unless I was dreaming, because sometimes you dream these things when you're listening. I'm sure they mentioned Maggie Thatcher though, crying out loud. Oh, that's the truth. Otherwise, all my life I've been. No, no, that is really. Ah, they do mention a Maggie. Yeah, but it's not Margaret Thatcher apparently. But
oh no.
that's what I was thinking.
Oh, we know a Maggie too, Maggie
I was going to
Tuttle.
say it could have been a Maggie Tuttle, couldn't it?
Okay, so